Good morning.
Good morning.
Apologize, just a moment. My name is Katrina Morrison, and I am in Collinsville, Oklahoma. Today, I am interviewing Margaret Simon from New Iberia, Louisiana, for the oral history project titled COVID-19, Teacher Post Writing to Bridge the Distance, which will be archived at Oklahoma State University Oral History Research Program. Will you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Margaret Simon. I'm here out on the Bayou Teche, which is where I live in South Louisiana, right on the Bayou Teche, and a little bit chilly, a little windy, but I wanted to be outside. So
wonderful. Can you tell me a little bit about how you came to be an educator?
Well, I have always wanted to be, as far back as I can remember. When I was growing up, I babysat. I loved kids. I worked at a camp in the summertime. So, education was really what I wanted to do. So I went into elementary education as an undergraduate. Later, though, I started working with the National Writing Project, and I took a course with the National Writing Project and kind of rediscovered the writer in me and became certified as a Writing Project Fellow and continued with a master's in gifted education. So I currently teach gifted students as an itinerant teacher in Iberia Parish. But writing is really what led me there and is a passion of mine.
So you travel around to different schools. About how many schools do you serve?
Yes. This year I'm only servicing 2 schools, but I'm actually servicing more because we have some gifted students who have selected to do the virtual school online. So I meet with them once a day with a Google meeting. So I'm still seeing kids that are not necessarily at the school that I teach at. So I'm in person for part of the day and online for part of the day.
Okay. Going back to March 2020, how did you learn that teachers in your state would be quarantined? Can you remember the specific moment, or were the teachers in your state quarantined? How did that all pan out for you?
It was quite a whirlwind because I started kind of getting wind of it on a Friday morning, and I remember distinctly speaking to a principal at one of my schools, the school I was in the morning, and she said, "Oh, there's no way, they're not going to shut down schools." And I was just feeling a different vibe. And so I made sure that when I met with my students that I prepared them for the possibility. And I said, we're going to keep in touch we have a blog that we use on Kid Blog. I said, we'll keep in touch on the Kid Blog. I just wanted to make sure they knew a way to get to contact me and be in touch with me. So, and then I got to my afternoon school, and there was a lot of chitter chatter, and the principal came on the intercom and said, "Teachers, there will be an announcement made at the end of the day." Now, this was really crazy because the announcement was the official announcement was made after dismissal, which I didn't think was right. I wanted to make sure that I was able to prepare my students. So I did. I said, I think we're going to be closing down schools. And I wanted them to feel comfortable about it and at least know that I was, aware, and I would be in touch with them. It was scary. It was really scary. And almost, it had the feel for me. We have a lot of hurricanes here, and it felt like a hurricane coming. Because we will shut down school for hurricane. And it just had that feeling of, ominous, like, oh, something bad is happening. So
yeah, that's a perfect simile, isn't it, for what we've been through?
yeah, it really is a storm that won't ever end.
Yes, absolutely. So teachers really didn't have a say. I mean, I guess my question is, were you able to participate at all in that decision, or was it handed down?
It was actually handed down by our governor. Our governor did it.
Okay, good.
It was not something that, no, we were not consulted at all.
Mm-hmm. The Oral History Project emerged from poetry that teachers wrote during the early days of social distancing, as you know. How did poetry and writing fit into your life in those early days of the pandemic?
Well, actually, the early days of the pandemic were beautiful spring days right here on the bayou. And I sat right here and did videos of my poetry to place online, in the case of, wanting, and I, shared it with anybody who wanted it, kind of thing. I just was, I was drawn to this kind of open door to do poetry and to teach. Teaching is something I do all the time, and I really couldn't take myself away from it. But it was also a beautiful time of year. I mean, I have to say, it was really nice to be home in this beautiful setting during that time period. I took long walks. I did yard stuff. I never do stuff in my yard. I never have time to do that. So I really enjoyed it in a way. So that's and writing. I often feel like I don't have the time to dedicate to writing that I want to have, and so I was able to do that too. So those early days were actually kind of like a extended spring break, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. Can you share a poem for me from that time and just talk about it a little bit?
Yes, I'd like to share this one because it's about really what I did almost every day, but here, it was in particular to a Sunday morning. And I love the form, how it used a countdown, so to speak. So I'm going to share this one. I have to put the glasses on now. Let's see. 8 reasons to take a walk on Sunday morning. 8. Bells chime, a call to worship, to empty pews, echoing the song of trees. 7. I'm sorry I keep taking the same path. The same images do not grow weary of me noticing. I pick gardenias from Cece's side yard. If she came out, she wouldn't mind. 6. I stop at Anne's to view her century plant as it reaches skyward. A century plant waits 25 years to bloom, blooming only once in a lifetime I took for granted only weeks ago. 5. I can take my time. No one will call to check on me. I'll check the feeders. The hummingbirds like sweet water. I'll get to it in time. 4. I walk and walk, wondering if it will always be this way. Hollow bells pealing for no one venturing out to see anyone. 3. It may rain tomorrow. Today the sun shines, the birds sing, and I don't have to join the chorus. I'll keep singing to myself. 2. A link was sent by email to a video church service, 1 priest, 1 reader. The organist plays as though the cathedral is full. Full feels scary now. Full carries weight. Who wants to be full? 1. I close this book. heat another cup of tea and find my shoes, find my way, fill my day, and perhaps bloom.
Wow. That's beautiful. That is so beautiful. I just want to join you on that walk.
Yeah. Yes. And it was, it was really something that kind of saved me, I guess, through that time period was,
Yes.
That beauty, the beauty of spring and being able to take a walk and, and that feeling of just kind of having all the time you needed to do whatever it was you needed to do.
So is that really what stands out to you now, or is there anything else that in rereading it that you noticed that maybe you didn't even catch when you wrote it?
Well, I noticed the feeling of peace wrapped around this feeling of fear.
Yes.
Because it was a fearful time as well. Not quite as fearful as it became. At that time, there was no one close to me who was sick. There was no one close to me who had died. That's completely changed now. So, and I had no way of knowing that was going to happen. I really, really didn't know that at the time. If we, hindsight 2020, whatever. But it does have a sense of peace that that I found during that time, I guess. So,
Yeah, I know you're the interviewee, but I have to say what struck me was the sense of, like, there was a sense of emptiness and fullness at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
The empty church, taking, the gardenia from the neighbor's yard, yet the neighbor wasn't there, but she wouldn't mind. I mean, it was that sense of fullness in such a time. But okay, you said already that your governor made a decision early on, and it sounded like the right thing to do to me anyway. But talk a bit about how the state further responded and how that impacted you and your school community.
Well, nobody really knew what to do as far as education goes. So that was really a very difficult thing. I don't really want to blame anybody, but nobody really knew what to do.
Right.
So, I tried to do what I thought was the right thing to do. And I started setting up, Zoom meetings with my students and getting in touch with their parents. And I even drove around to all of their houses and brought books to them. I just, felt this drive to actually be in contact with them, even though I couldn't be with them. Mm-hmm. And that was eventually discouraged. And, I was told I couldn't use Zoom anymore. Nobody wanted anybody to do anything. Mm-hmm. I think there was a fear of retribution or, something from parents. There were privacy issues. I don't know. It was beyond my control.
Yes.
So, that was very disappointing to me that they really took the teacher out of the picture. And we were given instruction, but it wasn't until 4 weeks later. And the instruction was very, we had to write a lesson plan, basically, and send that lesson plan out on a Friday. And whether or not the kids did it, or whether or not they had they never had any kind of contact with me to be able to do it, so it was, I just didn't feel like it was much of an effort, I think the kids are suffering for it. Mm-hmm. Well, I know they are. I've been teaching the group that I started with at the beginning of the year who were in virtual, because our district set up so that they could choose between virtual school and going in person. And as time went on, more and more kids came back in person, but there's still some who are staying at home. And the ones who are staying at home are not doing well. It tears me up inside. They're not doing well. They're not advancing as they should. There's going to be a lot of repercussions of this later on in these kids' lives, and it's hard to foresee what that is.
Mm-hmm. So obviously that's going to impact their writing, their literacy. Yeah, you have explained that so well. Trying to navigate in uncharted territory is it's really been the new norm this last year.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see. How about, did you write about what you just expressed to me? Did you write about the difficulty of the experience?
I did. One of the poets that I've been really attracted to, he actually won the National Book Award for 2020, Jericho Brown.
Yes.
And he created this form called the duplex. And I just love that form and, just wanted to play around with it. And it really spoke to me when I was teaching this virtual group. One of my students in the virtual group lost her grandmother. Suddenly, very suddenly. And she kind of really checked out after that. I'm sorry, there's a airplane or something riding over. So I'll tell you exactly what I did. Rather than trying to beat around the bush, let me just say what I did. I was raising butterflies, monarch butterflies. So it was one of the great, wonderful things that I got to do while I was at home. I had milkweed plants and I had all these caterpillars. A ton. A lot of caterpillars, and they were making, chrysalises and just, doing their thing. And, I thought it would be nice to just give her one. So I brought her, I actually had to drop it off with her aunt who teaches in the system. Anyway, I dropped off this butterfly net with a chrysalis in it for her. So anyway, the butterfly and the monarchs kind of were speaking to me at the time, as well as the sadness surrounding this one child. So this is the poem I wrote called The Duplex of Virtual Teaching. Butterfly wings remind her of her mother. A monarch is held by a child's fingers. A child's fingers hold her face before a screen. The screen fades as she covers her mouth to speak. If she can fade by covering her mouth, no one will notice she is there. No one will notice she is there or not there. Activate the mute button. Activate mute speaks louder than words. In a virtual world, you may miss something. In a virtual world, you may miss her hand reaching out to touch you. Her hand may reach out to touch you like a mother's touch in butterfly wings.
Wow. As you read that, how, I don't know how to, looking back, how did the experience of giving her the chrysalis turn out? And did she get the opportunity to be unmuted? The girl, I mean.
The chrysalis did not turn out.
Oh no!
I know. No, it did not. Unfortunately, did not emerge, and that's part of the lesson I have been learning with raising monarchs: is they don't all survive. And probably a lesson learned in doing this, thinking that, okay, I'm giving this child something to look forward to, and then it didn't work. But, part of the lesson was, things don't always turn out like you want them to be. But the child has come back to in-person school, and I've been able to be a little bit involved in getting her some counseling help. So they're not healed, but they're better.
Yeah. But that just makes me think, about how important it is to take advantage of those moments that, they're just those serendipitous moments to share with a child, to give a child something. We're all about giving prizes and rewards, but there are also those things that we can give a child in a time of need that are so much more important.
Yeah.
I'm sure, I can't imagine how she's going to always remember you giving her that chrysalis. So regardless of how it turned out.
I don't know. She's kind of mad at me right now.
Oh, she'll get over it.
I'm making her do some work she doesn't want to do.
Yeah. I also want to touch on that line about the mute button, and the invisibility that really touched me, because so many of our kids, when you, we have gone virtual 3 times, for example, and when you teach kids via Google Meet, of course they can, not show their faces, and they are that invisible that you said.
Yeah.
And that's very poignant to me.
It's something that's really actually bugged me a lot. I really have had a hard time with that, because the kids, they can turn their screens off. They can turn their mute button off. And I have this one student I've been working with since the beginning of the school year, and I just don't feel like I know him at all, because we've actually never met face to face. He never turns his screen on. He always leaves the mute button on and just writes to me in the chat. And I just, it's sad to me. I just don't feel like I can reach him, and it's very much what I expressed in this poem about not being able to reach through the screen, and I haven't been able to reach him, and it's very sad to me.
How did your school year end? What changes did you experience in your teaching practices? What changes did you experience in your relationship with students? And I think you've already hit on that. Families and colleagues.
Well, it really felt like it never did end. To me, it feels like this hole that was left, or a cliff that we just kind of dropped off. There's so many things that happen at the end of a school year, ceremonial things that create the ending. We have certain, there's certain activities that we do every year at the end of the year, and gatherings that we do, and parties, and I don't know, all those things were gone. So there really wasn't an ending. And, in a way, it's a loss. It's a really, I think it's a big loss. And again, it's hard to know how that loss will show itself as the years go on. But I do feel like it was a it was a loss, and we have to grieve that, I guess. I don't know. We're trying to pick back up and go forward. But everything is so different, the way we see students is different. When we actually do see them in person, we're masked, they're masked. We're keeping our, distance from them. I've gotten a new student in the last week, and she just was identified as gifted, and she's in second grade. And it's so hard to distance from a second grader. Mm-hmm. I mean, she wants to be right there with me I was trying to read a story to her, and she says, but I can't see the pictures. And I'm like, well, you have to stay at your desk while I read the story. It's just hard. It's just different, Yeah. And those little ones, they hug you anyway. Yeah. I mean, you just didn't. I mean, I love the carpool line because the littlest ones will come and hug me, even though they know I've got a mask on. They've got a mask on. It's just, that's the way kids are,
Right. I teach high school students. And so I have a young man that's strong academically. He's a senior, and he's signed up with the Marines. And he surprised me this week and told me that he's going to actually finish up high school with them. I guess they have some kind of a school. I had never heard of it. And he's going to Ohio, finish his high school experience. And so then after school, I had hall duty. And he came up and hugged me. And that's the only hug I've gotten this year. So, and it was particularly meaningful. So
yes, it is. So those little things that we just kind of took for granted, I guess. We didn't, I mean, you just assumed that you could hug your students, and it's not happening.
Is there a poem that might relate to that?
Let's see.
Or let me also ask this: is there anything you'd go back and change? Or maybe did you have any aha moments? Or was there any, like you already said earlier, there was a silver lining to it all personally, and that it allowed you to have time that we don't often have in our busy world. Was there anything maybe you'd change, or was there an aha moment? Was there something toward the end of the year that reflects that?
I'm looking at my poems to see if there's anything that I'll share this one. Sometimes we have poems that come to us and we don't really know how they got there. And one of the things that's been so beautiful about participating in the ethical ELA poetry prompts has been right, because they kind of encourage us just to write, not a lot of, cleaning it up and revising, just get it done and write it. And I always know if what I've written is anything. And so this one of the responders wrote to me, and she said, your poem reminds me of this book called A View from Saturday. Well, I have taught A View from Saturday before. I know the book. I know what she was talking about, but it wasn't anywhere near what I was thinking about. But I loved what she said so much. I titled the poem A View from Forever Saturday. And I think it speaks to the fact that we were kind of forever in Saturday. We were never, like when we got out of school, there was not Monday through Friday anymore. We were in that forever Saturday. So I want to thank her for that that title. And it's also a form. Forms can be really fun to play around with.
Mm-hmm.
A change will be arriving here. Come near. The captive shell is broken free. Follow me. Someone will likely lose their way. You may. We're on the crest of a new day. Fear should never capture your hand. When moon rises above this land, come near, follow me, you may.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny that you have a form poem speaking to a formless time.
Mm-hmm.
So, and also it reminds me, you're mentioning that, you had taught the book, and then lo and behold, somebody says your poem sounds like the book. Reminds me that maybe the books become a part of us.
Mm-hmm.
The stories become a part of us that manifest somehow in some way. I don't know.
Yeah, it was particular to the captive shell because we were she related it to the sea turtles who will follow. They come out of their nest.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to think of the word. They come out of their nest and then they follow the moonlight to the sea. Mm-hmm. But sometimes they will get confused if there are lights out near them on a beach or something. They might get confused and follow that light and get misdirected. And so the kids in this book were watching this and redirecting the sea turtles to go to the right place. Wonderful. So I loved that. I thought, yay, this is a great way to think of this, is that, we're kind of redirected. We're redirected. We've got a new way to go and a new direction that we're going in. And I don't know how to do it any better than anybody else, but I do hope for hope, I guess. That's what I'm hoping for.
So basically, you didn't have school after spring break, correct? I mean, not in-person learning is what I'm trying to say. And then did you come back in person at the beginning of this school year? And have you remained in person, or how has that worked out?
We did, but not when it was scheduled to start. We were scheduled to start early August, and our COVID cases were really high at that time. So they put off the start till after Labor Day. And so we started in person after Labor Day. And we have not, some schools have shut down and gone virtual and then come back. But mostly those have been high schools. Elementary schools have all stayed open. And, we've all had our share of COVID scares.
Yes.
So, unfortunately, that's the price you pay for being in person. But,
can you tell me about your writing life now? Maybe connections to other teachers through writing? And I guess we could refer to this as a third space between school and home, just for teacher writers.
Yes, I have connected with lots of teacher writers, and it is just so fulfilling to my writing life. And I think that's really was so helpful to me being isolated during the pandemic, because I haven't been isolated from that. I still participate in Poetry Friday. I do a blog. I have a writing group. We were already meeting by Zoom because none of us live close together. So we were already using Zoom for meetings. So my connection to the writers, teachers, poets in my life didn't change. In fact, it was probably enhanced because of the opportunity to participate more in those things, in writing, in, connecting with the online writing and things like that. So that's been a savior for me. I really, I get a lot out of that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What, if any, benefits do you think will come of COVID-19 in understanding literacy teaching and learning for teachers and students regarding equity, access, emotional well-being, teacher communities? What benefits?
That's a tough one. So easy to see all the things that aren't beneficial. But this, what we're doing right now, this is this ability to talk to people face to face, so to speak, using technology is really incredible. And I'm hoping to use some of that with my own students in the future. Well, I'm using it now. I shouldn't say in the future. I'm using it now. We've connected with authors. Kate Messner has been doing some author visits, webinars for very reasonable price, and I've done those, and I've brought them into the classroom with my in-person students, but because of the ability to be able to do a Google Meet at the same time, I bring in the other kids by Google Meet. So I can have, and being itinerant and my kids are all at different schools and different places, I actually can bring them all together and be able to show them that webinar with the author. So that's a real advantage to this, just the heightened use of the technology that way. I was already using blogging with my students. That's been something that's really been sustained. We continue to blog. We continued to blog through when we were out of school, and when as we've been back, I make sure that all of my students that I teach, because I teach different, I'll have one student or two students at a time. I don't have big groups of kids, but across the whole district, I can connect different students that way, and I put up writing prompts for them to participate in. I share videos with them, so the technology part of it, I think, has been very positive, and that has, I really think has changed the face of the way we educate. And also it's so helpful for being able to connect with authors. I live in a small town in South Louisiana, and it is very rare for us to get any kind of author visit. And the budget's tight for that. And, so I've been really, really lucky to, and I think, part of it is that I just stay so connected online to authors through writing. And I belong to SCBWI, which is the Society for Children's Book Writers and Illustrators, and connect through NCTE, which is the National Council for Teachers of English. And, so there are lots of national ways that I stay connected so I can bring those literacy activities to my students.
Mm-hmm. What strategic directions for education would you like to see? And I think you've addressed that somewhat. A young teacher would benefit from the encouragement to connect outside of the classroom, outside of school.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I really do. Gosh, you really have to be connected beyond the school walls, especially now, because there's no you're not having professional development with other teachers in the, or even just passing them in the hallway. There's, limited amount of contact and conversation and that kind of thing. And I've always not had a lot because of being an itinerant teacher, going to different schools. I've never had a lot of time to spend with other teachers. So a lot of my connections have been through, virtually, I guess, through internet and blogging and things like that.
Yeah, and particularly since you're a singleton, that to me, you're already, I have, for example, at my school, I think there are 9 of us in our department,
Yeah, we have throughout our parish, we have, excuse me, I say parish because Louisiana has parishes, instead of districts and counties. But we have 5 elementary teachers who teach gifted, but we have not had any contact with each other. We lost the position of our supervisor, and I think it was a COVID loss. They had to cut someone, and so they cut her. And she was the one who connected us. She was the one who got us together to socially and to plan and do things together. And that's just not happening. So it's really sad that those connections have been lost. And, but I think, there's so many ways to connect virtually. You just have to look for them. They're there, You can find your group. You can find your people.
Yeah, that's right. Very good. Well, is there one poem that you wrote that was particularly meaningful to you, other than the ones you've shared, that you would like to share in closing?
In closing, I want to share this one in closing because it's a kind of braggy poem. It brags on me as a teacher, a writing teacher, but it also speaks to that satisfaction and excitement that I feel when one of my students has actually written something really good. Yes. I get pretty excited about it. So it's titled Magic Bean. How a writer is made, some think comes from a magic bean. It just is. This writer can't help but write and write, but I know better. I know a writer comes from the magic wand of a teacher who told her she was. A teacher finds magic in the light of a child's words, rubs the lantern again and again. She knows the power of waiting, of how a seed of an idea can sprout if you give it nourishment and time. I love most the smile of realization. Wow, I wrote that. Pride from my wishing, which in the end is me working magic, still unknown, still a mystery. Mm-hmm. Kind of made me tear up. But working that magic with kids it's wonderful. It really is.
Yes, particularly in this mysterious time.
Yeah,
that we're in.
Very, very much so.
Yeah. Well, Margaret, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And that'll bring us, I think, let me double check, but I think that brings us to our close. Thank you so much for your generosity of time and spirit. The OSU Oral History Research Program will make this available. So thank you so much. And I'll end, and then I guess that's it for us. I'm sorry because it's been such a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.